Welcome to our channel. Imagine building your entire life around trust, only to watch it shatter in an instant. Andrew, a dedicated teacher and loving husband, thought he had it all, until his wife's devastating betrayal turned his world upside down. What happens when the person you trust most becomes the source of your greatest pain, and can love truly be rebuilt from the ashes of infidelity? Join us as we dive into this gripping story of heartbreak, resilience, and redemption that will leave you questioning the boundaries of forgiveness. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss this. In the heart of summer 1972, nestled in the rolling hills of a quiet Midwestern town, life seemed simple, almost idyllic. The kind of place where everyone knew your name and secrets rarely stayed hidden for long. This was the home of Andrew Miller, a soft-spoken high school teacher with a passion for literature and a knack for connecting with even the most difficult students. At 32, Andrew's life was a blend of quiet ambition and routine comfort. But, as we'll soon learn, not all routines are made to last. Andrew lived in a modest two-story house on Cedar Street with his wife, Clara. Clara was the epitome of grace, with her auburn hair and bright green eyes that seemed to light up any room she entered. She worked part-time at a local florist shop, arranging flowers with the same care and precision she applied to every aspect of her life. The couple had been married for 7 years, and while their relationship wasn't perfect, it had always felt solid, built on mutual respect, shared dreams, and a deep, abiding love, or so Andrew thought. Their lives revolved around the small community. On weekdays, Andrew would bike to the high school, where he taught English literature. His favorite authors, Hemingway, Steinbeck, and Fitzgerald, often made appearances in his lessons, earning groans from his students but secretly sparking their interest. Clara, meanwhile, spent her mornings at the florist shop and her afternoons volunteering at the local community center. They were the kind of couple who hosted barbecues in the summer, joined church bake sales in the fall, and always made time for Friday movie nights. But beneath this picture-perfect facade, cracks were beginning to form. It started subtly. So subtly that Andrew hardly noticed at first. Clara, once so warm and attentive, seemed preoccupied. She began working longer hours at the florist shop and came home with a distracted air, her phone buzzing more frequently than usual. At first, Andrew chalked it up to stress. After all, the shop was busier than ever with wedding season in full swing. "Busy day?" Andrew asked one evening as Clara shuffled into the kitchen, dropping her purse onto the counter with a sigh. "You could say that," Clara replied, her voice clipped. She poured herself a glass of wine and retreated to the living room without another word, leaving Andrew standing there with a plate of freshly grilled burgers. This wasn't like her. Clara had always been the kind of person who thrived on connection, the first to ask about his day or share a funny story about a customer. But lately those moments of connection were few and far between. Andrew told himself it was just a phase, that every marriage had its ebbs and flows. Still, a small seed of doubt began to take root in his mind. One Saturday afternoon, Andrew decided to surprise Clara with lunch at the florist shop. He knew how much she loved the chicken salad from the deli downtown, and he figured a small gesture might lift her spirits. As he approached the shop, Andrew caught sight of Clara through the large glass window. She wasn't alone. A man stood close to her, too close. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with slicked-back hair and a confident demeanor that made Andrew instantly uneasy. Clara laughed at something the man said, a laugh that Andrew hadn't heard in weeks. Andrew froze, unsure of what to do. Was this innocent a coworker? A friend? He pushed the thoughts aside and walked into the shop, the bell above the door jingling to announce his arrival. "Andrew!" Clara exclaimed, her eyes widening for a split second. Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "What a surprise!" Andrew's gaze flicked to the man, who extended a hand with a practiced smile. "You must be Andrew. I'm James. I've been helping Clara out with some arrangements for a big wedding order." Andrew shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the way James's eyes lingered on Clara. "Nice to meet you," he said, forcing a polite smile. Clara seemed flustered, rushing to explain how busy the shop had been, and how grateful she was for James's help. Andrew nodded, but the knot in his stomach tightened. Something about James felt off, though Andrew couldn't quite put his finger on it. That evening, Andrew couldn't shake the image of Clara and James. He tried to dismiss it, telling himself he was being paranoid. But the more he thought about it, the more the little things began to add up. The late nights, the guarded phone calls, the sudden interest in working out and dressing up for work. Clara noticed his quiet demeanor over dinner. "You've been awfully quiet tonight," she said, her tone light but probing. "Just tired," Andrew replied, pushing his mashed potatoes around his plate. Clara studied him for a moment but didn't press further. She changed the subject, chatting about a new flower arrangement she was designing for an upcoming wedding. Andrew nodded along, but his mind was elsewhere, replaying every interaction with James and scrutinizing Clara's behavior. A week later, Andrew came home to an empty house. Clara had left a note on the kitchen counter. "Working late again. Don't wait up." Andrew sighed, frustration bubbling to the surface. He decided to distract himself by organizing the garage, a task he'd been putting off for months. As he sorted through boxes, he came across an old photo album from their honeymoon in Italy. Flipping through the pages, Andrew felt a pang of nostalgia for the days when their love felt unshakable. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a text from a colleague, reminding him about the upcoming parent-teacher conference. Andrew set the album aside and returned to his cleaning. But the seed of doubt had grown into something he couldn't ignore. One night, unable to sleep, Andrew found himself scrolling through Clara's social media. She had posted a picture of a stunning floral arrangement with the caption, "Teamwork makes the dream work." The picture was beautiful, but it wasn't the flowers that caught Andrew's attention. It was the reflection in the shop's glass display. There was James, standing just behind Clara, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Andrew's heart sank. The friendly demeanor he'd tried to convince himself was harmless now seemed anything but. His mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Was it serious? Could their marriage survive this? Andrew knew he couldn't keep ignoring the signs. It was time to confront Clara and find out the truth. Andrew's stomach churned as he sat in the quiet living room, staring at the floral-patterned armchair where Clara always sat to read her favorite novels. The room felt eerily silent, broken only by the faint ticking of the wall clock. Tonight, he couldn't pretend everything was fine. Clara came home later than usual, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she walked in. "Sorry I'm late," she said absent-mindedly, setting her purse down on the kitchen counter. "It's been a crazy day." Andrew stood, his jaw tight. "We need to talk." The tone of his voice stopped her in her tracks. Clara turned to face him, her green eyes narrowing slightly. "What's wrong?" Andrew's heart pounded as he held up his phone, the picture from her social media displayed on the screen. "This," he said, his voice steady but cold. "Do you want to explain what James is doing in the background of this photo?" Clara's face paled. For a moment, she said nothing, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words coming out. "Andrew," she finally began, her voice wavering. "It's not what you think." "What am I supposed to think?" Andrew's voice rose, a mix of anger and hurt. "You've been distant for months, working late, and now this. You expect me to believe there's nothing going on?" Clara hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "We've just been working closely on the wedding projects," she said quietly. "That's all." Andrew shook his head, frustration bubbling over. "Do you think I'm an idiot, Clara? I see the way he looks at you, the way you laugh with him. Is it just work, or is there more to it?" Clara's silence spoke volumes. Andrew's chest tightened as he realized the truth he'd been holding onto hope, telling himself it was all in his head. But now the weight of betrayal was undeniable. The conversation spiraled, Clara's defenses crumbling under Andrew's persistent questions. Eventually, she admitted to what Andrew had feared. Her relationship with James had crossed a line. It started innocently, she claimed. Long hours at work, sharing personal stories, finding comfort in each other's company. But over time, it became something more. "I didn't mean for it to happen," Clara said, tears streaming down her face. "I was lonely, Andrew. You've been so busy with school, and I felt invisible." Andrew's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Invisible. I've been here, Clara. Every day, I've been here for you, and instead of talking to me, you turned to him?" "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "It was a mistake, Andrew. I didn't want to hurt you." Andrew shook his head, his voice hollow. "Well, congratulations, Clara. You succeeded." The days following their confrontation were tense and strained. Clara insisted she'd cut ties with James, but Andrew couldn't shake the image of them together. Every time her phone buzzed or she mentioned work, his mind spiraled with doubt. To make matters worse, James wasn't entirely out of the picture. He still worked at the florist shop, and Clara couldn't avoid him without quitting her job, something she refused to do. This only fueled Andrew's suspicions, creating a wedge between them that grew wider by the day. Andrew threw himself into his work at the high school, staying late to grade papers or prepare lessons. The students noticed his distracted demeanor, and his colleagues gave him sympathetic looks, though no one dared to ask what was wrong. At home, he and Clara barely spoke, their once warm and lively home now cold and heavy with unspoken words. During one particularly difficult day at school, Andrew found himself confiding in Rachel, a fellow teacher. Rachel taught history, and her no-nonsense attitude and dry wit had always made her easy to talk to. When she asked him if everything was okay, Andrew surprised himself by opening up about his troubles. Rachel listened without interrupting, her sharp brown eyes filled with understanding. "That's tough," she said when he finished. "But you need to figure out what you want, Andrew. Do you think you can forgive her?" Andrew sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. I don't even know if I want to." Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "Take your time, but don't let this eat you alive. You deserve to be happy, Andrew. Remember that." Her words stuck with him, offering a glimmer of clarity in the fog of his emotions. For the first time in weeks, Andrew considered what he wanted. Not for Clara, not for their marriage, but for himself. One evening, Andrew came home to find Clara sitting at the kitchen table, a stack of papers in front of her. Her eyes were red, and she looked up at him with an expression that was equal parts sorrow and determination. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice trembling, "about us, about everything I've done." Andrew stood in the doorway, his arms crossed. "And?" "I know I've hurt you," she said, her gaze dropping to the table. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I don't want to keep living like this, walking on eggshells, pretending we're okay when we're not. I think we need to take some time apart." The words hit Andrew like a punch to the gut. He'd thought about separation, even divorce, but hearing Clara suggest it made it feel real. "So that's it?" he asked, his voice sharp. "You're giving up?" "No," Clara said quickly. "I'm saying we need space to figure out what we want, whether we can move past this or not." Andrew stared at her, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to fight, to hold on to the life they'd built together. But another part, the part that had been quietly growing since their confrontation, knew she was right. They couldn't keep living like this. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Clara moved in with a friend, leaving Andrew alone in the house they'd once shared. At first, the silence was unbearable, each empty room a reminder of what he'd lost. But over time, he began to find solace in the quiet, using the space to reflect and heal. He started running in the mornings, something he hadn't done since college. The rhythmic pounding of his feet against the pavement became a kind of therapy, a way to clear his mind and process his emotions. He also reconnected with old friends, joining them for weekly trivia nights at the local pub. And then there was Rachel. She continued to offer a listening ear and kind words, becoming an unexpected source of comfort in Andrew's life. Their conversations grew deeper, moving beyond work and into shared passions and dreams. For the first time in months, Andrew felt a spark of hope. As Andrew's life slowly began to stabilize, he realized that his marriage to Clara had reached its natural end. It was a painful truth, but one he knew he couldn't ignore. They'd shared beautiful moments, but their relationship had been irrevocably damaged. One crisp autumn morning, Andrew met Clara at a coffee shop to discuss their next steps. The conversation was civil, even bittersweet, as they reminisced about the good times while acknowledging that it was time to move on. By the end of the meeting, they'd agreed to file for divorce, both promising to handle it amicably. If you're enjoying this story and want to hear how it all turns out, Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Andrew should give love another chance? With Clara gone and the house growing eerily quiet, Andrew found himself grappling with emotions he hadn't allowed himself to fully feel. Grief, anger, and a profound sense of betrayal swirled within him like a storm. He threw himself into his work, taking on extra responsibilities at school and pouring his energy into mentoring students. Yet, no matter how busy he kept himself, the emptiness followed him home each night. Rachel continued to play an integral role in Andrew's life. What had started as casual conversations in the teacher's lounge had deepened into a friendship he hadn't realized he needed. Rachel had an uncanny ability to cut through his defenses with her honesty and warmth. One Friday evening, after a particularly taxing week, Rachel invited Andrew to join her for coffee at a small cafe downtown. He hesitated, unsure if he was ready to step out of his comfort zone. But something about Rachel's smile, a mixture of reassurance and gentle encouragement, made him say yes. The cafe was cozy, filled with the hum of conversation and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. As they talked, Andrew felt the weight on his shoulders begin to lift. Rachel shared stories about her own struggles, her voice tinged with vulnerability. For the first time, Andrew realized he wasn't alone in his pain. "You're stronger than you think," Rachel said, her eyes locking onto his. "Don't let this define you." Her words stuck with him, igniting a spark of determination. One evening, as Andrew was heading home from the school, he decided to take a detour through the park. The crisp autumn air was refreshing, and he hoped the walk would clear his mind. But as he rounded a bend in the path, he froze. Clara was sitting on a bench, her shoulders slumped and her face pale. Beside her sat James, his body angled towards her as he spoke in low tones. Andrew couldn't hear what they were saying, but the tension between them was palpable. For a moment, Andrew considered turning around and walking away, but something in Clara's expression stopped him. She looked defeated, her usually confident demeanor replaced by something fragile. Taking a deep breath, Andrew approached both Clara and James looked up, startled by his presence. "Andrew," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. James straightened, his face hardening. "This isn't the time, man." Andrew ignored him, focusing on Clara. "Is everything okay?" Clara hesitated, her gaze flickering between the two men. "It's fine," she said quickly, though her voice lacked conviction. Andrew could see through her facade. "We need to talk," he said firmly, his eyes narrowing at James. "Alone." James opened his mouth to argue, but Clara placed a hand on his arm. Shaking her head reluctantly, James stood and walked away, leaving the two of them in tense silence. As Clara and Andrew talked, the truth spilled out. Her relationship with James had unraveled, leaving her feeling more alone than ever. She admitted that she'd made mistakes, but she also expressed regret for how she had hurt Andrew. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Clara said, her voice trembling, "but I need you to know that I'm sorry truly." Andrew listened, his emotions a mix of anger, sadness, and unexpected compassion. For months, he had carried the weight of her betrayal, letting it fester and consume him. But now, as he looked at her, he realized he didn't want to carry it anymore. "I don't hate you, Clara," he said finally, "but I can't go back to what we had. Too much has happened." Clara nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I hope you find happiness, Andrew. You deserve it." For the first time, Andrew felt a sense of closure. It wasn't the happy ending he had once envisioned, but it was a step toward healing. In the weeks that followed, Andrew threw himself into rebuilding his life. He renovated the house, transforming it from a painful reminder of his past into a space that felt like his own. He started volunteering at the community center, finding purpose in helping others. Rachel continued to be a steady presence in his life, their friendship deepening with each passing day. One evening, as they sat together on his porch, sipping tea and watching the sunset, Rachel turned to him with a smile. "You're different," she said, her tone teasing but sincere. "In a good way." Andrew chuckled, shaking his head. I guess I've learned a thing or two about resilience. Rachel's smile softened. You've always had it in you, Andrew. You just needed a reason to find it. Their eyes met, and for the first time in years, Andrew felt a flicker of something he thought he'd lost. Hope. One night, Andrew received a call from the school principal, offering him the position of head of the English department. It was an opportunity he had dreamed of for years, but the timing felt bittersweet. Accepting the role meant stepping fully into a new chapter of his life, one that no longer included Clara. He called Rachel to share the news, her excitement for him evident in her voice. This is amazing, Andrew. You're going to be great. As they talked, Andrew realized how much Rachel's presence had helped him. She had been a constant source of encouragement, reminding him of his worth even when he doubted himself. One crisp winter evening, Andrew invited Rachel over for dinner. The house was warm and inviting, filled with the scent of roasted vegetables and the soft glow of candlelight. As they ate, their conversation flowed effortlessly, laughter punctuating their stories. After dinner, as they sat by the fireplace, Andrew turned to Rachel with a nervous smile. There's something I need to tell you. Rachel raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. What is it? Andrew took a deep breath, his heart pounding. You've been there for me in ways I didn't think anyone could. I don't know where I'd be without you. Rachel's expression softened, her eyes shining with emotion. Andrew. Before she could finish, Andrew leaned in, their lips meeting in a gentle, tentative kiss. It was a moment of vulnerability and trust, the culmination of months of shared struggles and quiet support. Andrew and Rachel's budding relationship brought light into Andrew's life, but not without complications. Their connection, though natural, sparked whispers at school. Colleagues speculated about the timing, with some wondering if their closeness had begun before Andrew's separation from Clara. While Rachel brushed off the gossip with her characteristic confidence, Andrew couldn't shake the discomfort it caused him. One particularly tense day, Andrew found a note slipped under his classroom door. It read, in sharp, accusatory handwriting, "Looks like you've moved on pretty quickly, Mr. Miller. Wonder what your students would think." Andrew's hands clenched the paper tightly, his mind racing. Who had written it? Was it just petty jealousy, or something more sinister? He shared the note with Rachel later that evening, her brow furrowing as she read it. "People are going to talk," she said, her voice steady. "But we can't let them control our lives. What we have is real, Andrew. Don't let them ruin that." Her words gave him comfort, but the sense of unease lingered. It was as if the past refused to let him move forward. Just as Andrew began finding his footing, Clara unexpectedly re-entered his life. She appeared one afternoon at the school, waiting for him in the parking lot. Her face was drawn, her once vibrant eyes now clouded with regret. "Andrew," she said softly, her voice catching, "can we talk?" Andrew hesitated, the old wound of their separation still raw, but something about her demeanor made him pause. He nodded, gesturing toward a bench near the school's entrance. As they sat, Clara began to speak, her words tumbling out in a mix of apology and desperation. She admitted that her relationship with James had been a mistake, a fleeting attempt to fill a void she hadn't even fully understood. James had left her months ago, and she'd been struggling to pick up the pieces of her life ever since. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But I needed to tell you how sorry I am. Losing you was the worst thing that's ever happened to me." Andrew listened in silence, his emotions a tangled web of anger, pity, and lingering affection. Part of him wanted to lash out, to tell her she had no right to ask for absolution. But another part, a quieter, more compassionate part, recognized the pain in her voice. "I appreciate you telling me this," he said finally, his tone measured. "But we can't go back, Clara. Too much has happened." Clara nodded, her shoulders sagging as if a weight had been lifted. "I understand. I hope you find happiness, Andrew. You deserve it." As she walked away, Andrew felt an unexpected sense of closure. For the first time, he realized he could let go of the anger he'd been carrying for so long. Just as Andrew began to embrace the possibilities of his future, life threw another curveball his way. During a routine staff meeting, the principal announced that the school would be undergoing a restructuring. Budget cuts meant some positions would be eliminated, and while Andrew's job as head of the English department was safe, Rachel's history program was at risk. The news hit Andrew like a punch to the gut. Rachel had worked tirelessly to engage her students, often going above and beyond to make history come alive for them. The thought of losing her not just as a colleague but as a daily presence in his life was almost unbearable. "I'll fight this," Rachel said later that evening, her determination shining through her frustration. "I won't let them take this away from me." Andrew admired her resolve, but he couldn't shake the fear that their relationship might suffer under the weight of this new challenge. For the first time, he realized how much he relied on Rachel, not just as a romantic partner, but as a source of strength and stability. The restructuring process dragged on for weeks, each day filled with uncertainty and tension. Rachel threw herself into her work, organizing petitions and speaking at school board meetings. Andrew supported her as much as he could, but he couldn't ignore the strain it was putting on their relationship. One evening, as they sat in Andrew's living room, Rachel let out a heavy sigh. "I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle," she admitted, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it." Andrew reached for her hand, his grip firm but gentle. "It is," he said, "because what you're doing matters. And no matter what happens, I'm here for you." Rachel smiled weakly, but Andrew could see the doubt in her eyes. He wondered if his words were enough, if their relationship was strong enough to withstand the pressures they were facing. The school board's final decision came on a rainy Tuesday evening. Andrew and Rachel attended the meeting together, the tension in the room palpable. As the board members discussed the budget cuts, Rachel sat ramrod straight, her hands clenched in her lap. When the announcement finally came, it was as if time stood still. The history program would be cut, effective immediately. Rachel's face remained stoic, but Andrew could see the pain in her eyes. As they left the meeting, Rachel turned to Andrew, her voice trembling. "I don't know what I'm going to do." Andrew pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly as the rain poured down around them. "We'll figure it out," he said, his voice resolute. "Together." The loss of her position hit Rachel harder than she let on. To Andrew, she seemed composed, determined. Even but late at night, when the world was quiet, he could see the cracks in her armor. She spent hours scrolling through job listings, her expression growing more despondent with each rejection. "I just don't get it," she said one evening, her voice tinged with frustration. "I've worked so hard, and for what to be cast aside like I don't matter?" "You do matter," Andrew said, sitting beside her on the couch. "To your students, to this community, and to me." Rachel managed a small smile, but the doubt lingered in her eyes. Andrew wished he could do more, but all he could offer was his unwavering support. Still, he couldn't ignore the fear that her struggle might pull them apart. One morning, as Rachel sifted through another stack of rejection emails, Andrew came rushing into the kitchen, a flyer clutched in his hand. "Look at this," he said, excitement lighting up his face. "There's an opening for an education coordinator at the History Museum downtown. It's perfect for you." Rachel took the flyer, her brow furrowing as she read. "I don't know. Andrew, museums are different from teaching. What if I'm not qualified?" Andrew placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm but reassuring. "You are. You're passionate about history, and you're amazing with people. This is exactly what you need. A fresh start." Rachel hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Okay, I'll apply." As Rachel prepared for her interview, Andrew found himself dealing with an unexpected challenge of his own. Clara had reached out again, this time asking to meet for coffee. Though he was reluctant, Andrew agreed, sensing that she had more to say. They met at a quiet cafe, the tension between them palpable. Clara wasted no time getting to the point. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, her hands wrapped tightly around her mug. "About us, about everything that happened." Andrew nodded, waiting for her to continue. "I know I can't undo the past," Clara said, her voice wavering, "but I wanted you to know how much I regret hurting you, and I hope, someday, we can find a way to be friends." Andrew studied her, his emotions a mix of gratitude and caution. He could see the sincerity in her eyes, but he wasn't sure if he was ready to let her back into his life, even as a friend. "I appreciate that, Clara," he said carefully. "But I think we both need time to heal, maybe someday, but not yet." Clara nodded, a hint of sadness in her smile. "I understand, and I hope you find happiness, Andrew. You deserve it." The day of Rachel's interview arrived, and Andrew could sense her nervous energy as she paced the living room, rehearsing answers to potential questions. He stepped in front of her, placing his hands on her shoulders. "You're going to be great," he said firmly. "Just be yourself, that's more than enough." Rachel took a deep breath, nodding. "Thank you, Andrew, for everything." As she left for the museum, Andrew found himself anxiously awaiting her return. When she finally walked through the door, her face was lit with a mixture of relief and excitement. "How did it go?" he asked, practically jumping off the couch. Rachel grinned. "I think it went well. They seemed impressed and I felt confident, like I belonged there." Andrew pulled her into a hug, his chest swelling with pride. "Of course you belonged there. They'd be lucky to have you." Just as things seemed to be looking up, an unexpected revelation threatened to unravel everything. Late one evening, Andrew received an email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "You deserve to know the truth." Hesitating for only a moment, Andrew opened the email. Attached was a series of messages between Clara and James, messages that revealed the extent of their betrayal. Not only had Clara been unfaithful, but James had also manipulated her, using her insecurities to drive a wedge between her and Andrew. Andrew's chest tightened as he read the messages, anger and betrayal coursing through him all over again. Though he had moved on in many ways, this new information brought old wounds to the surface. He shared the email with Rachel, her brow furrowing as she read. "This is awful," she said softly. "I can't believe someone would go to such lengths to hurt you." Andrew sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I thought I was past this, but seeing it laid out like this, it just brings everything back." Rachel placed a hand on his arm, her gaze steady. "You're stronger than this, Andrew. Don't let their actions define you. You've already come so far." Her words, as always, grounded him, but the revelation left him questioning everything, about his past, his ability to trust, and his readiness to fully embrace the future. The following days were filled with introspection for Andrew. He found himself revisiting the moments that had shaped his relationship with Clara, Rachel, and even himself. Ultimately, he realized that he had a choice: to let the past dictate his future, or to use it as a lesson to build a better life. One evening, as he and Rachel sat together on the porch, Andrew finally spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened with Clara, and with us." Rachel turned to him, her expression open and patient. "What about it?" "I realized that I've been holding on to a lot of anger and fear," he admitted. "But I don't want to live like that anymore. I want to move forward, with you." Rachel smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. "I'm glad you said that, Andrew, because I want that too." Their conversation marked a turning point, solidifying their commitment to each other and to the life they were building together. Andrew and Rachel's resolve to move forward was tested almost immediately. The anonymous email continued to weigh on Andrew's mind, dredging up old fears and insecurities. Though Rachel's support was unwavering, he found himself questioning whether he was truly ready to leave the past behind. Meanwhile, Rachel received an offer from the museum, a position as the education coordinator. It was everything she had hoped for, yet she hesitated. Accepting the job would mean fully committing to a new chapter in her life, one that required stepping out of her comfort zone and into a role she'd never imagined for herself. "Why are you hesitating?" Andrew asked one evening as they sat at the kitchen table, a celebratory bottle of wine untouched between them. Rachel sighed, running a hand through her hair. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I take the job and fail?" Andrew reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "You won't fail. You're passionate, talented, and capable of more than you realize. Don't let fear hold you back." Rachel smiled, his words bolstering her confidence. "You always know what to say." Just as Rachel prepared to accept the museum position, Clara appeared once more, this time uninvited. Andrew returned home from work to find her waiting on his porch, a strained smile on her face. "Andrew," she said, standing as he approached, "I need to talk to you." Andrew's first instinct was to send her away, but something in her expression stopped him. Reluctantly, he invited her inside, though he kept his distance. Clara wasted no time getting to the point. "I received an email," she said, pulling out her phone. "It was similar to the one you told me about. Someone exposing everything that happened with James." Andrew's brow furrowed. "Why would someone send this to you?" Clara shook her head, her frustration evident. "I don't know, but whoever it is, they're trying to stir up trouble, and I thought you should know." The revelation left Andrew uneasy. The anonymous sender clearly had a vendetta, but their motives remained unclear. Was it someone seeking justice, or simply someone looking to cause pain? The mystery of the anonymous emails added a layer of tension to Andrew and Rachel's lives. Though they tried to focus on their relationship and their individual pursuits, the shadow of the past loomed large. Rachel, ever the pragmatist, encouraged Andrew to confront his feelings head-on. "You can't let this eat away at you," she said. "Whoever sent those emails wants to keep you trapped in the past. Don't give them that power." Her words struck a chord with Andrew. He realized that he needed to address the lingering wounds from his relationship with Clara, not for her sake, but for his own. Andrew's opportunity for closure came unexpectedly. One evening, as he prepared to meet Rachel for dinner, he received a call from Clara. Her voice was shaky, filled with urgency. "Andrew, I need to see you," she said. "It's about the emails." Reluctantly, Andrew agreed, meeting her at a nearby coffee shop. Clara looked frazzled, her usually polished appearance disheveled. "I think I know who's behind the emails," she said, her voice low. "It's James." Andrew's eyes narrowed. "Why would he do that?" Clara hesitated before answering. "He's bitter. After everything fell apart between us, he blamed me for ruining his life. I think this is his way of getting revenge." The revelation left Andrew stunned. While he had no desire to rehash his past with James, he realized that confronting him might be the only way to put the situation to rest. With Clara's help, Andrew tracked down James, who was now working at a small advertising agency in town. The confrontation took place in a sterile conference room, the tension between the two men palpable. "Why are you doing this?" Andrew demanded, his voice steady but firm. "Haven't you caused enough damage?" James leaned back in his chair, a smug smile on his face. "I'm not the one who ruined your marriage, Andrew. That was Clara's doing." Andrew's fists clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. "This isn't about the past. It's about the emails. Stop trying to stir up trouble and let us move on." James shrugged, his expression indifferent. "Fine, but don't expect an apology. I don't owe you anything." As Andrew left the meeting, he felt a mix of frustration and relief. While James's lack of remorse was infuriating, Andrew knew he had done what he needed to do. The past was finally behind him. With the confrontation behind them, Andrew and Rachel turned their attention to the future. Rachel officially accepted the museum position, and Andrew threw himself into his work at the school, finding renewed purpose in his role as head of the English department. One evening, as they celebrated Rachel's new job, Andrew surprised her with a small velvet box. Her eyes widened as he opened it, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "Rachel," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "you've been my rock, my inspiration, and my reason to hope again. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Rachel's eyes as she nodded, her smile lighting up the room. "Yes, Andrew, 1,000 times, yes." Their embrace marked the culmination of their journey, a journey filled with pain, growth, and the unshakable belief that love could heal even the deepest wounds. Rachel's acceptance of Andrew's proposal marked a turning point, but their journey wasn't over yet. Planning a wedding while juggling demanding careers brought its own set of challenges. The museum's grand reopening was fast approaching, leaving Rachel working long hours to ensure her educational programs were ready. Meanwhile, Andrew was buried under midterm exams and a curriculum overhaul at the school. Tensions began to creep into their otherwise harmonious relationship. Small disagreements over guest lists, venue options, and even catering spiraled into heated arguments late into the night. "I'm trying my best, Andrew," Rachel said one evening, her voice tinged with frustration as she set down a stack of museum brochures. But I can't do everything. And neither can I. Andrew shot back, his tone sharper than he intended. We're supposed to be in this together, but it feels like we're just fighting. The silence that followed was heavy, both of them retreating to their corners of the house to cool off. The stress of their individual responsibilities was taking its toll, threatening to overshadow the joy of their engagement. A week after their argument, Rachel suggested they take a break from wedding planning and spend a quiet evening together. They packed a picnic and drove to a secluded hill overlooking the city. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Rachel spoke. I don't want us to lose sight of why we're doing this, she said, her voice soft but resolute. It's not about the perfect wedding or impressing anyone else, it's about us. Andrew reached for her hand, the tension in his shoulders easing. You're right. I've been so focused on the details that I forgot what really matters. They sat in comfortable silence, the weight of their recent arguments melting away. In that moment, they resolved to face their challenges as a team, prioritizing their relationship over the external pressures that had begun to pull them apart. Just as Andrew and Rachel found their footing again, a crisis at the museum threatened to derail their progress. An unexpected delay in the delivery of key exhibits left Rachel scrambling to adjust her educational programs. The museum's director, a notoriously demanding woman named Evelyn Grant, placed the blame squarely on Rachel's shoulders. You assured me everything would be ready, Evelyn said during a tense staff meeting, her icy glare fixed on Rachel. Now we're a week away from opening, and we're nowhere near prepared. Rachel's confidence wavered, but she refused to back down. I understand the gravity of the situation, and I'm working around the clock to make sure we're ready, but this delay wasn't within my control. Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line, but she said nothing more. Dismissing the meeting with a wave of her hand, Rachel left the room feeling defeated, but she knew she couldn't afford to let the setback define her. When Rachel shared the details of her meeting with Andrew, he immediately stepped into problem-solving mode. What can I do to help? He asked, his determination shining through. Rachel hesitated, her pride battling with her exhaustion. I don't want to drag you into this. You have enough on your plate. Rachel, we're in this together, Andrew said firmly. Let me help. With Andrew's support, Rachel devised a plan to adjust her programs using alternate resources and creative solutions. Together, they spent late nights brainstorming and organizing, their shared effort bringing them closer than ever. The day of the museum's reopening arrived, and Rachel's programs were ready. The museum was buzzing with activity, guests marveling at the exhibits and engaging with the interactive presentations Rachel had designed. Andrew watched from the sidelines, his chest swelling with pride as he saw Rachel in her element. But just as the event reached its peak, Evelyn approached Rachel with a grave expression. We've received a last-minute complaint, she said, handing Rachel a letter. Apparently, one of the interactive exhibits isn't functioning properly. Rachel's stomach dropped as she read the letter. It was a minor issue, but the timing couldn't have been worse. She rushed to the exhibit in question, her mind racing with possible solutions. Andrew, sensing her distress, followed close behind. What's wrong? He asked. Rachel explained the situation, her voice tinged with panic. If we don't fix this, it could ruin the entire event. Andrew placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You've got this. Let's figure it out together. With Andrew's help, Rachel identified the problem, a technical glitch in the software powering the exhibit. Though she wasn't particularly tech-savvy, Andrew's background in troubleshooting gave him the skills needed to address the issue. As they worked together, Rachel couldn't help but marvel at how seamlessly they functioned as a team. Andrew's calm demeanor balanced her urgency, and within an hour, the exhibit was up and running again. When Evelyn returned to check on the progress, she found the exhibit bustling with activity, guests laughing and engaging with the content. She gave Rachel a curt nod, her expression softening slightly. Well done, she said before walking away. That evening, as they sat on the museum steps watching the last of the guests leave, Rachel turned to Andrew with a grateful smile. I couldn't have done this without you. Andrew chuckled, draping an arm around her shoulders. You didn't need me. You're incredible all on your own. I just gave you a little push. Rachel leaned into him, her heart full. Despite the challenges they'd faced, they had come out stronger, their partnership proving to be their greatest asset. As the weeks passed, the successes at the museum and in their personal lives brought Andrew and Rachel closer together. But just as things seemed to be settling, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. Andrew received news that his school district was implementing a sweeping review of its faculty, including potential layoffs and reassignments. The uncertainty rattled him, threatening to undo the stability he had worked so hard to rebuild. The announcement came during a tense staff meeting. Due to budgetary constraints, the superintendent began, we're evaluating all departments to ensure resources are allocated effectively. We'll be making decisions in the coming weeks. Andrew's mind raced. He had dedicated years to his students and his role as head of the English department. The thought of losing everything was unbearable. That evening, he shared the news with Rachel, who immediately offered her support. "We'll get through this," she said, taking his hand. "No matter what happens, we'll figure it out." Andrew appreciated her words, but the stress weighed heavily on him. He spent long nights reviewing his accomplishments, crafting a compelling case for why he should remain in his position. Yet, the gnawing fear of the unknown lingered. As Andrew navigated his professional uncertainty, Rachel faced a challenge of her own. The museum director, Evelyn, offered her an opportunity to lead a prestigious project, a traveling exhibit showcasing the state's history. The catch: it required extensive travel and a year-long commitment, which would mean significant time apart from Andrew. Rachel was torn. The project represented everything she had worked toward, but the thought of leaving Andrew during such a critical time weighed heavily on her. She broached the topic one evening as they prepared dinner together. "There's something I need to talk to you about," she began, her tone cautious. Andrew set down the knife he was using to chop vegetables and turned to face her. "What is it?" Rachel explained the offer, her voice filled with both excitement and hesitation. "It's an incredible opportunity, Andrew. But I don't want to leave you, especially now." Andrew's heart sank at the thought of her leaving, but he forced himself to smile. "This is your dream, Rachel. You have to go for it." Rachel studied his face, searching for any hint of resentment. "Are you sure I don't want to make this harder for you?" "I'm sure," Andrew said firmly. "We've faced worse, we can handle this." Despite their mutual assurances, the prospect of Rachel's absence created an undercurrent of tension. They tried to stay optimistic, but as the date for her decision approached, small disagreements began to surface. Rachel worried about leaving Andrew to face the challenges at his school alone, while Andrew wrestled with feelings of abandonment he couldn't fully articulate. One evening, the tension boiled over during an otherwise quiet dinner. "I just don't understand why you're so eager to go," Andrew said, his tone sharper than he intended. Rachel set down her fork, her eyes narrowing. "This isn't about being eager, it's about following my passion, Andrew. You of all people should understand that." "I do," Andrew replied, his voice rising. "But it feels like you're choosing this project over us." Rachel's face fell, her voice softening. "That's not fair. I'm trying to balance everything, but it's not easy." The argument left them both drained, retreating to separate corners of the house to process their emotions. For the first time since their engagement, doubt crept into their minds. A few days later, Andrew attended a school board meeting where the decisions regarding staff changes were finally announced. To his relief, he was not only retained but also offered the opportunity to lead a new initiative aimed at improving student engagement through creative writing. The news was a validation of his hard work and dedication. When he shared the news with Rachel, her excitement was genuine. "That's amazing, Andrew. You deserve this." Her support reminded Andrew of what truly mattered. That evening, he surprised Rachel with a heartfelt gesture, setting up a candlelit dinner in their backyard. As they ate under the stars, he addressed the tension between them. "I've been selfish," he admitted. "I let my fears cloud my judgment. You've always supported me, and I need to do the same for you." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Andrew, I never wanted to make you feel like you weren't my priority. I needed to know you were okay with this." "I am," Andrew said, taking her hand. "I don't want to hold you back. If this project is what you want, then I'll support you every step of the way." With their renewed commitment to each other, Rachel accepted the museum's offer. They spent the weeks leading up to her departure cherishing every moment together, from lazy Sunday mornings to impromptu weekend getaways. On the day of Rachel's departure, Andrew accompanied her to the train station. The platform buzzed with activity, the sound of distant whistles and the hum of conversation filling the air. As the train pulled in, Rachel turned to Andrew, her expression a mixture of excitement and sadness. "I'm going to miss you," she said, her voice trembling. Andrew pulled her into a tight embrace. "And I'll miss you, but we'll get through this." They shared a lingering kiss before Rachel boarded the train. As it pulled away, Andrew stood on the platform, watching until she disappeared from view. Though his heart ached, he felt a sense of pride and hope. They were both pursuing their dreams, and their love would endure the distance. With Rachel embarking on her year-long project, and Andrew settling into his new role at the school, life shifted into a new rhythm. The distance was hard, as expected, but they quickly found ways to stay connected. Late-night video calls, heartfelt letters, and surprise care packages became their lifelines, reminders of the bond they had built together. Andrew discovered a surprising joy in sharing Rachel's adventures with his students, who were eager to hear about her travels and the exhibits she was curating. It became a way to bridge the gap, to make her presence felt even when she was miles away. While Rachel thrived in her new role, Andrew took the opportunity to focus on himself. Leading the creative writing initiative reignited his passion for storytelling, and he found immense satisfaction in watching his students discover their own voices. One particular student, a shy girl named Lily, blossomed under Andrew's guidance, writing a short story that earned her statewide recognition. Lily's success reminded Andrew of why he became a teacher in the first place, to inspire and empower others. It was a lesson he carried into every aspect of his life, including his relationship with Rachel. Their time apart wasn't just a challenge, it was an opportunity for growth, for both of them to become the best versions of themselves. 6 months into Rachel's project, Andrew received an unexpected email from the museum director, Evelyn. The traveling exhibit was making a stop in their town, and Rachel would be overseeing its setup. For the first time in months, they would have a chance to see each other in person. The reunion was nothing short of magical. Andrew arrived at the museum late one evening to surprise Rachel as she worked. She was reviewing a layout map when he appeared, a bouquet of her favorite flowers in hand. "Need a hand?" he asked, his voice breaking the quiet. Rachel turned, her eyes widening in shock before a radiant smile spread across her face. "Andrew!" She rushed to him, throwing her arms around his neck. For the next few weeks, they made the most of their time together, rediscovering the ease and comfort of their connection. The challenges of the past year melted away as they shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments. As the exhibit's time in their town drew to a close, Rachel found herself facing a difficult decision. The museum director had offered her a permanent position that would require frequent travel, but it would also give her a chance to build on the work she had started. When she shared the news with Andrew, his reaction surprised her. "I think you should take it," he said without hesitation. Rachel's brow furrowed. "But what about us? I don't want to spend the rest of our lives apart." Andrew took her hands in his gaze steady. "We've proven that we can handle anything. If this is what you want, we'll make it work. I'll always support you, Rachel." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of gratitude and love. "I don't know what I did to deserve you," she whispered. Andrew smiled. "You were you? That's enough." Rachel ultimately accepted the position, but the couple found a way to balance their individual pursuits with their commitment to each other. They set clear boundaries, ensuring they never went too long without seeing one another. Over time, their relationship grew stronger, forged in the fires of distance and determination. Andrew continued to thrive in his role at the school, even publishing a collection of short stories inspired by his students. Rachel, meanwhile, gained national recognition for her work, becoming a sought-after voice in the world of historical preservation. A year after Rachel's initial departure, Andrew and Rachel finally stood together at the altar. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair, held in the garden of the museum, where their story had reached its turning point. The guest list included family, close friends, and even a few of Andrew's students who had been rooting for their teacher's happy ending. As they exchanged vows, their voices steady with conviction, it was clear to everyone present that this was a love built on trust, respect, and perseverance. Their journey hadn't been easy. but it was theirs, a testament to their resilience and the power of love to heal and transform. In the years that followed, Andrew and Rachel often looked back on their journey with gratitude. The challenges they faced, while painful, had shaped them into the people they were meant to be. Their relationship wasn't perfect. No relationship ever is. But it was strong, honest, and deeply fulfilling. Andrew's scars from his past, once sources of pain, became reminders of his strength and capacity for growth. Rachel's career flourished, but she never forgot the importance of balance, always making time for the home they had built together. Together, they proved that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, time and time again, for the person who matters most. And that's the end of this incredible story. If you enjoyed this recap and want to hear more stories about love, resilience, and redemption, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Let us know in the comments, what's your favorite part of Andrew and Rachel's journey?